friends, welcome back to Light Guided. Lisa here, and I'd like to do an energy reading looking ahead as we transition into the new year. The energy has certainly been quite intense for a lot of different reasons, in part because people are continuing to evolve and grow in their inner light, and that always brings with it quite interesting inner experiences, and sometimes it's reflected in our outer experience as well. But Spirit was also bringing me a message of, for this particular group, of recognizing that the events that are occurring in the world, and of course we've had a lot of events in the last couple of years in particular, but as we move forward, we may begin to feel that these events that are happening, such as, natural disasters, on top of shootings, on top of political outrage, on top of, the total chaos that seems to be ensuing. Spirit wants this message to be very clear. And it's, in some ways, it's kind of a complicated message because it takes a certain level of grounding to be able to hear what this message is. The message is that it's important for us to continue to hold the light and to hold the awareness that in the grand unfolding of life and energy, everything is happening and unfolding in a manner of speaking in the way it's meant to. And what happens, especially for people that are sensitive and light workers and empaths, is that as these things happen in the world, we become very attuned to the pain and the suffering of others. We become we can become overwhelmed by this idea that that things are not going well in the world. And what Spirit wants to communicate is that just because in our human experience we have a judgment that something occurring is going poorly, at the 5D level, in fact, there is, this is not exactly the right word, but what we can understand this to be is like there is a purpose in this, there's a meaningfulness in this, and that I guess in some regard to recognize that even though it feels like the world is spinning out of control, that we can ultimately be a center of gravity, a center of groundedness, a center of love. We are not here to save the world. We are not here to fix what we believe is broken, but rather we are here to emanate the light and love of creation, of the Creator. I know this will only resonate for some of you, but these are the messages that are coming forward. So I am sharing what's coming forward. On a lighter note, let's go ahead and jump in. I've got these beautiful new cards that are super fun. They're called Notes from the Universe on Love and Connection. So let's just begin and see what messages the universe wants to open this reading with. Prepare to be astounded. Oh, I could see this happening in many ways. Kind of what the channeled message was, being astounded by all of the beautiful things in the world and being astounded by all of the intense, what we might call negative things in the world. There's more to come. We're going to continue to see this unfolding of events and people suffering in our mind, that people are suffering. And Spirit is telling me here that like a parent might want a child to learn a particular lesson. And so sometimes a parent may appear to not specifically guide a child, but rather allow the child to figure it out on their own, within reason, of course. And that's kind of what's unfolding here, is that as human beings, we're being given this opportunity to learn from our experience, learn from our mistakes. And Spirit is preparing souls on the planet. We're all being prepared to ascend and to evolve. And so anyway, prepare to be astounded. More of the same coming. And again, on the other side of that, we are always at choice in how we experience the world. And so through our own healing journey, we have this beautiful opportunity to begin to see the beauty and to feel the beauty of the unfoldment that's happening. Lovely message. Ooh, lots here. What would love do? I love that. I love that question. When we look at all of the things happening in the world and even in our own personal experiences, what would love do? If love were the responding force to a particular circumstance, what would it do? Something that I've been attuned to or called to lately that has stood out to me. We have this very kind of polar, and I'm not going to get too into politics here. I'm just looking at the energy, but we have this very polar expression. It happens to be couched around politics. And you say, oh, the far right and oh, the far left, and like all of the polar opposites, right? Each side contains some seed of truth. And what's happening is rather than changing the conversation so that the truth can be illuminated and each perspective or perception can be shared and examined, there's this resistance to each other's views. And that is not an act of love. Whether we're on the right side or the left side, when we are, tossing stones over the wall, so to speak, at one side or the other, we're not able to really fully understand the view and the truth that is trying to come forward. And so here we are called to what would love do? What would love do in a situation like that when you see somebody expressing a difference or a different view from you that may be very impassioned and may be very frightening because it seems to threaten the core of our survival? What would love do in that situation? And I feel like we're all being called to this higher level of interaction, this higher level of understanding. This new energy that we're coming into is less about having an opinion and expressing it. That's old energy. Old energy is this kind of masculine, action-oriented energy. The new energy we're moving into is, how do I emanate the presence of love through my own healing, right? Through my own healing, I don't have to be a source of reaction. I don't have to be a source of judgment. I don't have to be a source of anger or anxiety. I can simply be a source of love. Keep it simple. Oh my goodness, yes. Oh my goodness. In a time that just feels so overly complicated, not just with the world events, but like technology just seems so overly complicated. I've been struggling with this for the last couple of weeks where it's like at every turn, trying to just pay a bill or trying to make a phone call or anything. It just seems so overly complicated. So let's find ways to keep it simple. Start where you are. Recognize that where you are is already perfect. Although we're all on this journey, it's not like the journey has some sort of end point where we get to, arrive at this plateau and say, oh, I've arrived and now the work is done, or now everything is fine. The doors have swung wide open. We are now on a perpetual unfoldment here in a perpetual journey. So Spirit wants us to know, like, begin where we are. And the important piece, energy that's in this message is around being present, really practicing and cultivating what it means to be present. And that's a much longer conversation. There's a lot around, not focusing too much on the future, not focusing too much on the past. And also in presence, when we're present, we are embracing all that is. We are not in a state of resistance. Even if we find ourselves depressed or anxious or struggling or in pain in some way, whatever that happens to be for us, we are not in a state of resistance around that experience. We are just allowing that experience. And I feel like that's an important message here. And then finally, we have Pucker Up Buttercup. And this, to me, this energy reads like two things. One, Spirit is kind of saying, like, for those of you that are on a love path or seeking a love connection, get ready because something is coming in for you. And for others, this is an energy of receiving the gifts of the universe. Get ready to be in a receptive state. Prepare yourself to be in a receptive state. It's a beautiful message. I feel like Spirit just has so many gifts for us if we're willing, able, and available to receive them. Very nice. All right, now I want to go ahead and tap into the into my collective guides. These are often related to starseed systems. That's the language that I use that resonates for me. And I feel like there are channeled messages from starseeds. So I'm going to go ahead and tap in and see if there's anything more here. And while I am tapping into this energy, I am creating and asking to be a portal of light for any of that information that needs to come forward that can be channeled through me energetically, whether that's in my words or simply just in the presence of being here with you. Through that opening, I'm asking for this collective, for anybody who watches this video, I'm asking for those insights that are coming from the spiritual realm to have a great deal of clarity so that people on their healing journey are able to find that solace at every step of the way. There is definitely an unfolding of that energy happening where our journeys are going to continue to have lessons, but they're going to be different kinds of lessons. Rather than having our external worlds falling apart, experiencing loss and major change and major shifts. That may happen for some of you, but for those of you where you've already been through a great deal of change in the last couple of years, the changes will begin to be internal. Internal changes, changes of habits, changes of perspective, etc. So I'm asking Spirit to allow that energy to come through for you so that you have greater clarity in your journey and greater ease along the way. Insights and awareness and wisdom that's needed to allow that those messages to bring that clarity and that peace. And I see them activating the energetic grid that is part of this collective. And for anybody who taps into this particular reading, you will become part of that energetic grid. All right. One moment, please. Wow. This very, very beautiful feminine energy has just entered the space. This is a new energy to me. There is normally a collective group of, you can call them souls, entities, whatever you want to call them, but there's normally an energy that I tap into it's an energy of wisdom, but it tends to have kind of, I would call the quality of a masculine energy. The energy that's coming through to me now is this incredibly loving, feminine, nurturing energy. And actually, I'm seeing it reflected in this card as well. This feminine, nurturing, loving energy is here to soothe your fear. It's here to help you integrate any energy of fear and anxiety. As you integrate that energy of fear and anxiety, you will begin to be more open to the bigger messages to the bigger energies that are available to you. So this is a time for receptivity. There is an energy here that is around, being reflective on some level, but they're showing me that we are moving away from this inner reflective quality. Let me explain that a little bit more. Oftentimes in communities where we're focused on healing and we're focused on, our growth and our soul development, we're often focused on it from a very mental perspective. And that mental perspective is often spurred on by philosophy that's related to psychology, right? Psychological philosophy. It's a very mental process. We enter into therapy, for example, and we do cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's teaching us how to change our mind. Many of us are moving toward the end of that practice or that process, and we're moving into this more embodied experience of presence that is about receiving. So less about reflecting on our navel, so to speak. And you may have heard that term, it's like being a navel gazer, right? We're moving away from being navel gazers, and we're being moved into this energy of, I described it before as being this energy of presence. And in this space of presence, as we cultivate that skill and that energy, we become more attuned to our higher self. Our higher self is not separate from all that is. Our higher self is not separate from what we might call a God or divine spirit, divine energy, the divine creator. The higher self is a piece of that overarching omniscient. What's the word? Omnipotent, omnipresent energy, and that they're showing me all these pictures about how our soul is just it is that outpouring of creation that is expressing itself through this physical being. When we sit in meditation, perhaps, and we think about the I am of who we are, the I am, we may begin to recognize how the I am does not actually live in the body. The I am, the consciousness of who we are, is part of the greater consciousness, is part of the greater energy of creation. So as human beings, when we talk about our healing work, we're talking about ways to navigate through the emotions and the physical body that sometimes limit our ability to be in touch with and aware of that higher self and more aware of the I am of who we are. This is a very complicated message, but I feel like it's, for some of you, I feel like this is where you are in your healing journey, and it's important to have affirmation around what evolution you are going through. And again, some people use the terms like ascension and soul evolution and things like that. And I'll look at this a little bit more closely through the reading, but these are just the messages from Spirit coming forward now. And then we have this second ray of wisdom. And again, a very similar message here. Although in this case, they're also showing me that they are, as you're able to move into this centered space of connecting with your higher self, the I am of who you are, there's this wisdom that you can tap into, that some of you are beginning to tap into, and you're just at the beginning of being able to be receptive to it. You're just at the beginning of being able to really hear and receive the wisdom that is available across the dimensions, the dimensionality of our experience, of our human existence, of our existence. they're really giving me this incredibly strong impression, and it's kind of odd to me because this is not something that comes through normally for me, but they're giving me this incredibly strong impression around really noticing that the physical body is not who we are. The physical body, and I'm sorry to use this term, but it's like the meat suit, it's like the meat suit. And I think I'm going to look into this and ask, what do they want us to know? What's important about this awareness around meat suit? Why do we need to understand this distinction between the physical body and the and the spiritual body? It's because that's part of our enlightenment journey. Part of our enlightenment journey is to recognize the suit, the meat, the flesh is not the who of who we are. It's not the what of who we are. Wow. I'm seriously, sometimes it's so funny trying to come up with words to describe what Spirit is showing me, and it's not easy. Sometimes it's like, I wish I had another language to speak because it doesn't always translate well. But there are some of you in this group that are moving into greater enlightenment, and they're showing me this as like the tip of the iceberg. Again, for those of you that this resonates with, at the tip of the iceberg, you are moving into this higher level of enlightenment. And how you know that you're moving into this enlightenment is kind of related to those messages that came through at the beginning. When you're moving into that level, you begin to disengage and unattach yourself from the polarity of, conversations that look like, kind of what we're dealing with in the political world now, and social media and media now. They're wrong, they're right, they're right, they're wrong, and, never the two shall meet. So as you become more into this energy of enlightenment or elevated consciousness, you begin to see and perceive things very differently. And through that change in perception, that is where the healing in the world begins to happen. It's like, as people see you in the energy of enlightenment, you don't even have to explain yourself. When we're in the energy of enlightenment, we're not trying to explain our position. We're not trying to defend anything. We're literally just holding the what is of life. And that's a very difficult concept in a lot of ways, but that is very much the momentum and the energy as we move out of an old energy into this new energy. It's very much about letting go of the attachments of those kinds of ways of thinking. For some of you, you may be moving into simplifying your lives, downsizing, getting rid of things that you don't need, disconnecting yourself from, social media, disconnecting yourself from, things like that. And it's not to say that those things don't have some relevance to some degree, but the issue or the question is, to what degree do you attach yourself to it? And if every time you watch the news, for example, and you get depressed and angry and anxious, that's the energy that you're vibrating in the world, depressed, angry, and anxious. And if you just think about it on the surface, if we're walking around with that energy, how is it that we're actually helping to bring love into the world? Inner peace. Wow, totally. That feminine energy just came back in, and what a lovely energy it is. What a lovely energy it is. And there is the experience here. Some of you are struggling to transition into this higher level of enlightenment because you feel on some level that you're obligated to help the world in a certain way. You may have stories about what it means to be a helper, stories about what it means to be a healer. And again, there's a place for that. And for some people, they are called into doing works of service. And that's beautiful and it's needed and it's part of the whole. But there is a group of you that, again, are moving into this higher, more enlightened energy that is less intellectual, more spiritual. And what's keeping you a little bit stuck right now is that you have some stories about who you think you're supposed to be as an enlightened person. And, you know, as examples of, and I'm a little hesitant to say this, I don't have a lot of knowledge in this area, but they're telling me there are examples of people that are truly enlightened that we can look to as models about where we are headed. People like Mahatma Gandhi, and even though he had a perspective, he held a certain kind of energy that was very enlightened, and he had a mission and an action, but he held an energy that was very enlightened. Martin Luther King held a vision or an energy that was very enlightened. There are others. Buddha is another energy that's coming through. They're telling me, for those of you that are interested, you may begin to look at the energy of the Ascended Masters. Again, this is not something I'm very familiar with. I'm hearing this for the first time in this reading, so I will also be looking at the Ascended Masters. There's something here for us to learn from the Ascended Masters at this time regarding this journey toward enlightenment. As we move into, as we work toward this inner peace, as we work toward this inner peace and as we shift into this more enlightened energy, I asked, what would it take? What would it take to really tap into that inner peace? And the energy of community came out. And there's a couple different messages with this. One is around aligning and attuning yourself with community or people that are on the same journey as you. So seeking that out. There's also something in this energy around leadership, being and I don't mean this in the traditional sense of the word, being a leader, but there is a quality here of leading, or, you know, by being that presence that we've been talking about, you naturally become a leader and a model for other people. So while the Ascended, if I had to put it on a scale and say that the Ascended Masters are at a 10, you know, I would say that for most of us here on the planet, and in this group in particular, we're probably at like a level 3 to 5 in terms of our enlightenment, right? So we're making our way toward the enlightened journey here, and yet we still have the capability of being role models or mentors or just a presence for those that might be on the journey that are at a 1 or a 2. So that's what they're showing me here. And they're saying, like, don't be afraid to step into that role, into holding that role. And part of your learning, part of your growth is by being in that role. There's a lot of lessons or experiences or things that will help you to continue to grow. So there's also an energy here of reciprocity. Giving and receiving is very much part of the journey. It's very much part of the growth that's happening here. And let me just ask for, I'd like to use a different deck. And I want to ask for final guidance here. Final guidance for the collective on this journey toward enlightenment. What more do we need to know? Opening to discovery. This is interesting. I've never had this message come through before, but they're giving me the strong impression that while connected, there are sort of two different pathways, and they're showing me for this collective specifically, there are two different pathways. There are those that are walking a spiritual journey on this road to enlightenment from the perspective of a spiritual relationship with the self, with creation, with what we might think of more perhaps from a religious viewpoint, perhaps. That's not quite right, but that's the best way I can explain it. And there are others on this journey who are, it's like walking parallel paths. And the other journey is more around psychic development, developing mediumship, developing these kind of gifts or skills. Now, these things are not exclusive of one another, but what they're showing me here is that it's like we want to support that both are happening. So while we're developing these skills of intuition, of ability to help people at that level, that first of all, they're saying that is a tool for us individually to use. So as you develop your own intuition, this is part of tapping into that greater energy of creation so that you can have clarity around those insights that are coming forward to you. And yeah, they're just clarifying here. It's like they want to be clear that these are, although in this group they appear to be parallel and separate journeys, what they're hoping to bring forward here is the ability for whatever path you're on and however that's unfolding, they'd like you to begin to integrate this path. Finding your spiritual center that is along the journey of enlightenment while also cultivating your ability to have intuition. And they're kind of saying like these are not separate things, but we are pursuing them as though they are. So when you're on the journey of enlightenment, you are naturally tapping into your intuition and your ability to see, right? And when you're on the journey of cultivating skills to see, you'll naturally begin to tap into the energy that will lead you toward enlightenment. But they're saying like there's two parallel tracks here, and they would like for each track to kind of have more connectivity and relationship with the other. So if you don't have a spiritual practice that allows you to tap into this energy of enlightenment, they'd like to encourage that. And if you're on the path of enlightenment and you haven't started tapping into your spiritual gifts around, insight and intuition, perhaps mediumship and channeling, they'd like you to begin to do that as well. Great and full. There's something about gratitude, true gratitude, the ability to recognize that no matter what is happening in our inner experience or our outer experience, the ability to recognize that it's all part of the same whole. It's not like when we get to that place where we can begin to see every situation as a blessing, regardless of the outcome, whether it's something we think we want or not. When we get to that place where we can see everything as a blessing, that is part of our enlightenment. And so I feel like that's when we look at how to bridge the gap between or how to integrate these parallel pathways between, okay, I'm going to practice all my psychic gifts, or okay, I'm going to be on a journey of enlightenment. How do we bring that together? We bring that together by really practicing the energy of gratitude. And this is kind of a personal bias of mine. I'll just own that up front. And I say it's a bias, but it's also a journey I've been on. I've been on the side of expressing gratitude when I didn't really fully understand what it meant to me. When I would just say, I'm grateful for fill in the blank, and I was grateful for those things. But over time, at least for me, what I've discovered is there's a depth to the gratitude that evolves over time. And that's what I feel like they're asking you to begin to see here, is to be grateful, not just for what you have, but to be grateful to practice what it means to be grateful for what you don't have, and to recognize that there's a place for that. And they're showing me kind of a yin yang, how, energies that might seem opposite fit together in a certain way. And so that's the message they want to bring forward here in terms of their advice is practice recognizing to be grateful for even what you don't have. We often, as human beings, have a lot of stories. We have stories about why we have, why we don't have what we don't have. And when we get stuck in those stories, it's easy to lose sight of the center of who we are. And again, they're giving me that impression once again of like moving out of the head, moving into the heart, moving into this centeredness, into this higher self that is part of the I of who we are. Woof! Any final messages, Spirit? I'm not sweating yet. That's a good thing, but wow, a lot of energy here. Yes, I knew that card was going to come out, Waking the Lion. I don't know if I even need to say anything about this card. I feel like it's just, this is the energy that's waking up in you right now. This is the energy that's waking up, and it's just beautiful. It is like the way I experience this energy, it's like the full integration of the masculine and the feminine, and like how it all works together. And I feel like that perhaps is part of the journey that we're on, right? Is like, how does all of this energy work together? How do I become a source of action and creation? And they're telling me here that that's really the key to manifestation, right? Manifesting and co-creating with spirit is about being able to be aligned with the energy of the masculine and the energy of the feminine, not one or the other. And final message here around broken open. Again, they're telling me that the next leg of the journey for most of you is going to feel a little more gentle. It's not going to be as earth-shattering as perhaps it has been over the last couple of years. And they're telling me like 2 to 5 years. For some of you, over the last 5 years, you've just had incredible hardship. This could be anything from losing jobs, losing people that you love, to all kinds of things, losing your home. This could be being in a natural disaster. I mean, there could be any number of things like that over the last 3 to 5 years that have influenced or impacted you. And they're giving me this very strong impression of encouragement to you to say, look, the journey is never over. The door is open. You'll continue on this path. And now you can continue on this path because you've learned what you needed to learn from those experiences. Now you can be on this path in a more internal way. So the next leg of this journey is, again, shifts that begin to happen more from the inside out. Changes in your belief system, changes in behavior patterns, ways that maybe you've behaved or acted in the past that are no longer in alignment with the I of who you are, that spiritual part of yourself. They're no longer in alignment. So now that the external world is becoming more in alignment with you, you are now able to focus more on that internal environment. They're pointing out to me, I don't know why yet. Let me see if I can clarify this. They're pointing out to me I think it was a tornado in Kentucky, and there was all kinds of destruction there, and they're bringing that forward into this reading very strongly. I do not know why. Let me just see if there's something here, if there's a message for someone that's watching related to that. Wow, stillness. There may be some of you who are watching this video, perhaps, that might be feeling particularly affected by that experience. I would say that for those of you that are particularly affected by that experience, you're highly empathic. And so you may be having the experience of taking on the suffering of others. And Spirit is saying that's not yours to do. It is not, you're not alleviating the suffering of others by taking it on yourself, by feeling it at that deep level. And so there's something here about, you know, how do we heal a situation like that? Then how do we heal a situation like that? If it's not about taking the pain of others on, how do we heal that kind of situation? And so first we start with our own energy. We start with grounding our own energy and being in, they describe it here as stillness, in that energy of centeredness, groundedness, that energy of, it's really the energy of the whole. A lot of times part of our stories about the world and part of what we get all hung up on is that we tell ourselves stories about how we're separate from everything. And it's that feeling of separateness that causes our anxiety and our depression and our fear and all of those things. We look at a situation like what happened in Kentucky and we think, oh, that's evil or that's bad or it wasn't meant to be. And in that perspective, we create separation. We say that's separate from the divine creator. That's separate from the good of life. And what the message that's coming through here is conveying is that those things are not separate from the good of life. And this is a very difficult, again, lack of a better word, but it's a very difficult lesson to learn. It's a very difficult lesson to change our perception or our view on these things that are happening that seem so destructive, that seem so harmful and so hurtful. And they're basically describing here like part of what you can bring into the situation for yourselves that's going to be helpful is this diligence around not allowing yourself to take on the pain of others. For some of you, I get very strongly that you are action-oriented, and actually for some of you, like to be action-oriented is the only way to work through this situation. And that might, for example, be, you know, boots on the ground, like getting, you know, going to Kentucky and provide, you know, maybe you're providing direct service or direct support. Maybe you're donating clothing or water or something like that. So something that's action-oriented. But whatever path you decide here, the key thing is to not be taking on the energy of that pain and that suffering. That is not yours to take on. And Spirit really wanted me to bring that forward. I don't know who this resonates for, who this message is for. But that's what they're bringing forward very, very strongly here. I feel like there's one more, something more around this energy. One moment, please. Wow, courage. You might think initially this energy of courage would be around, you know, what it means to have courage to step into this destruction or whatever. But actually what they're telling me is this is about courage to not take on the suffering of others. For many of you, or some of you at least, who have been in the habit of taking on the suffering of others, it's going to take some courage to change that experience, change that perspective and that way of being in the world. They do want me to tell you that this is a little bit of a difficult message to convey, and please know that there's no judgment in what I'm saying. But there are some of you who take on the suffering of the world because you yourself feel like a victim in the world. And so it's like you're identifying that inner woundedness with the woundedness of other people. And it's keeping you kind of plugged into what ultimately is a kind of separation from Spirit, if you will. It's ultimately a separation. And so the healing there, let me pull some specific cards around the healing. Which cards here? Let's use this one. What's the healing that's needed around taking on the suffering of others? For those that resonate with that, what's the healing that's needed? Thank you. Changing the story. Wow. Changing the story. Rewriting the story. Rewriting the story for yourself. Learning, as you learn to see the situation in a different way. Part of that is going to be around learning to tell the story in a different way. Learning to see the story in a different way. And there is... This came up earlier, but the fact is that to get to this new story or this new perspective, there is, for most of us, a process of changing our cognition, changing our thinking, changing the way that we think about things. For some people, you know, maybe you have like a strike of enlightenment and it just comes to you and you just naturally get, oh, wait a second, there's a different story here. But for most of us, we have to kind of work at this a little bit and consciously begin to find alternative stories to the situation. What more needs to be healed here? Whoa. Try that again. What more needs to be healed here? Thank you. Quieting the mind. And healing the heart. So that's not a very specific answer about, you know, what more needs to be healed here, but what I feel like this is about an encouragement to you to find a practice. I often refer to meditation because that's my practice. That's the one I'm most familiar with. Meditation and energy work. I practice those daily. And it helps me to quiet the mind and it helps me to heal my heart so that I can be in the world in a different way. And ultimately, through that process, I have learned how to, quote unquote, tell a new story for myself that has alleviated my own suffering. Whew. All right. I'm going to pull last messages. I'm going to pull 3 cards. These are going to be messages from departed loved ones. Thank you. So these may be very, very specific or they may be very general. Let's see who comes through. I definitely have at least one person, a departed loved one, coming through for one of you that is a female. This person feels, it's kind of a broad range, but I would say between 30 and 40, a relatively young female. Thank you. So for whoever that resonates with. And here are the messages from your loved ones on the other side of the veil. Oh, this could not be more lovely. For departed loved ones, these are the messages they have for you. Light. Imagine yourself as being composed of energy and light, because in reality, that's precisely what you are. You are a powerful being, and people are attracted to your brilliance. This is a time to remember how vibrant you truly are. I feel like they're just supporting this message by affirming, in different words, they're affirming the light of who you are. So when I talk about the I am of who you are, or that wholeness, it is really in the language of this light. And also we have this energy of love, which is so beautiful. Love is the foundation of your existence. And you're just as worthy of receiving as you are of giving love and compassion. While love can be a beautiful emotion, it is equally a form of energy that propels you through life. Again, I feel like that's another affirming message of what Spirit was bringing through before. And finally, we have vulnerability. This is a confirmation that you're seeking to tread into the unknown, unfamiliar territory, where decisions are based more on intuition than rationality. Don't let fear hold you back or allow a misguided sense that feeling vulnerable is somehow a negative condition. Again, another affirming message to me that just affirms everything that was coming forward before about the journey that some of you are experiencing at this time. I'm going to close out the session by blessing our time together and giving great gratitude for those of you that have been available to receive these messages. It's always my sincere hope that anything that I'm bringing forward allows you to feel more empowered, have more clarity, and to feel lighter, to just feel that love and support of the universe as we navigate forward in our day-to-day lives. And with that, I just send you much love and wish you much love. And thank you so much for being here. And until we meet again, take care.